Hey everybody, welcome back to World History with Mr. Finn. Today we are talking about the life of the people living in Western Europe. Now last class we jumped back to the Byzantine Empire. We jumped back to Justinian and trying to recreate the Roman Empire and how it did not last because there was just no reason for it. However, today we are jumping back up to the future where we were, where we stopped before we had to go back. That's the way history works to, put the whole story together. So we are back in Western Europe, France and England, and the life of the people, as I told you we would talk to today. And so let's take a look at this. Follow me on this. In the year 1000, the number of people living in Western Europe was 38 million people. That's all of Western Europe that counts today. I don't even know how many countries it would be counted in Europe today. But it's not really a lot. Even though I said million, 38 million is not a lot, because by what you see is in 300 years, you see the population, the number of people is up to 74 million people. So we see a pretty dramatic increase in population. The number of people is going up. Why is that happening? If you had gone back to the year 800, 1000 and walked around Europe, you wouldn't see very many people. You could walk an entire day and you would just be out in the world. There was not cities and people living in the way we think of it today. It would be rare to come. It would just be empty. That's the way you would feel about it. By the time you get to 1300, you're starting to see the population gain strength again and go back up. So the question is why? And it has to do with our culture of what these people were going through. Why does the population go up? Well, follow me on this. It's a pretty easy thing. Food goes up. Makes sense, right? The more food you have, the more people you can support, the more people can live longer, the more people you'll have. Plain and simple, if food goes up. So now let's jump into it. Why does food go up? Food's going to go up for a couple of different reasons. One, there's climate change. So I guess I'll do this. I'll say, why? Why does food go up? Natural climate change. Temperatures are getting warmer. It was like a mini ice age, which had temperatures a little bit cooler, which made the winter stay cooler longer. There was a shorter summer. Around this time period, we're going to start to see the climate change. There's natural climate change that happens. Throughout time, we've had ice ages. That's not for us. But what is for us is to understand that there is a climate change, meaning temperatures are going up. In this case, it's not an ice age. We're coming out of an ice age. So we'll say this. Temperature is going up. So if the temperature goes up, this is something that's important. There is more land to farm. There's more land to farm. So, and a longer growing season. So there's twofold thing with this climate change and warmer temperatures. That's going to allow for more crops to be grown, more land to be farmed, because areas that were not, suitable for farming now are because of this. And so you are going to see that being one of the reasons. Another reason, this is one. Another reason is going to be this. Iron tools. Now, when I say iron tools, iron is a metal. Before, they would use like wooden tools. They had, they would use, I guess they'd be pitchforks that would be made out of wood. That's what they would use. Now, iron is being used for all sorts of things, like plows and axes and tools. That's why I say iron tools. Meaning that they're just much more efficient. You can dig these, for one thing. I mean, this is a harness that I'm going to talk about, but you could use an iron plow, and what that means is you would have a harness. In this case, they used to use oxen. During this time period, they come up with a new harness that they can use on a horse, which is more powerful. You could use less horses to do this and like 6 oxen. That would be a mess. And with this new harness and this new tool, you could stand behind the horse and you would walk and it would plow. And what plow means is it would run this iron plow along the ground and it would dig a hole, not a hole, but a trench. So it would just be like a line that you would be digging. So a person would be walking here. Here's a happy person. I'm just going to do a stick figure horse. That way I don't need to be judged on my drawing. And then you might have this plow that would look something like this, and it would be connected to the horse, and it would walk, and it would dig a trench. And then you turn around, you come back, and it would dig another trench. And then you go back the other way and dig another trench, and you go back this way and dig another trench. Those trenches would be used to plant stuff, barley and rye and wheat and whatever. And so eventually you have things pop up. You plant the seeds in these trenches, and you grow crops. And so, I'm long-windedly, I'm talking a lot, this new plow and this new harness and these new tools allowed you to do this easier. And you could plow a lot larger area of land, and so you could grow a lot more wheat and barley and food in general and all that stuff. So let me get my terrible drawing out of here. But again, it all comes back to using iron tools and that new tools that would allow this. You also have this, the idea of a 3-field system. Here's something you might not know about agriculture and growing. The land that you grow crops on eventually gets what's called depleted, and you can't grow as many crops on it over time. But a 3-field system is basically this. Here's an area of land, here's an area of land, here's an area of land. All right? Now, you have 3 fields, and you grow stuff on this one, and you grow stuff on this one, but you do not grow stuff on this one. And so you go through the year, and you grow your crops, and you harvest your crops out of here and here, and then next year, when you go to grow crops, you do not do it here, but you grow crops here, and you grow crops here. And you leave this one with nothing on it so that you can replenish / not use up the land as fast. And you just keep going around and around and around, and you leave one field every year where you don't grow anything on it. And it allows it to come back, and that's a 3-field system, meaning that they're becoming more efficient farmers. All of this leads to this. Food goes up, population goes up, plain and simple. So you see a lot more people in Europe, and they're living their life. They have more food. There's a little more stability for these people, which is nice for them, because this is a time period of the Middle Ages where there had been a lot of warfare from the year 500 to the year 1000, 1300. You are going to see something, though, not the creation, but the new idea of somebody who is called a serf. Now, a serf is essentially a peasant. It's a peasant who is bound to the land. Now, if you remember feudalism, you had lords and vassals and things like that. And they had allegiances, and it was mutual, like, hey, they had to do certain things for you, you had to do certain things for them, and that was just the way it went. Now, a serf is legally bound to the land. They're not quite a slave, but they couldn't leave their area. They were bound to that land. This was the land that they were stuck on. So these are peasants who are working the land, and they must provide to the Lord or the person in charge of the time. To them, it would be their Lord. Provide them certain things, pay them for the use of the land, and work the land and give them crops and do all these things. So you see serfs or serfdom start to happen, and these people would be on a manor. A manor is a basically it's a self-sustaining farm. Think of it like, I mean, really the best way to say it is a farm. You know, it has everything on it. So if you went to a manor, you might have a blacksmith. You might have, someone who would be working making bread. Someone, I mean, it was just, stables where the horses were kept. I mean, a manor is basically like a large farm. And the people who worked that farm and that lived on that manor were called serfs. The lord of that manor would have, legal dominance over the people who lived there. He almost owned them. So all of a sudden, this is the way it's going to be living during this time. So if you were a serf or a peasant or someone who was bound to this land, working the land on a manor, you'd have a pretty rough life. Let me tell you what you would be doing. All year you would have tasks. Some of the months would be more busy. So if you were doing, August and September and October, where you harvest crops, would be a very busy time. If you're working in December and during winter, during this time they had snow, not like here, you'd be doing indoor activities. And then let's say in the spring you would be tending the animals as they start to have their animal babies, whether it's the sheep and horses and whatever else, chickens. That would be basically every month you would have certain tasks that you did living on this farm, and it would be a very hard life, very demanding physically to do all of these things. What would you eat, for example? You might eat, I mean, really the big thing for these people was bread. Bread, because it has a lot of nutrients, tons of nutrients. Like the way they made their bread had like barley and rye and oats and everything. It was brown bread. It was really heavy and it had a lot of nutrients that could help them sustain them while they were working on these farms. Berries, nuts, eggs from the chickens. Chickens are able to have eggs or produce eggs over and over, so you have eggs, nuts, eggs, cheese, from like goats. So the animals were used that these people had were used not for slaughtering and eating like protein and meat, but for things that could be produced over and over and over again. Because again, you only lived if you grew enough and had enough to make it through the winter. That's it. So you might have fish that you might use salt. Salt becomes super important to these people because salt preserves the food. If you went back in time, you'd want to go to the store and get a bag of salt and then be like, all right, I'm going back in time. You'd go back there and they would give you, they say, its weight in gold. You'd be like, here is salt. And someone would be like, this weighs how much? Here is how much gold weighs. There's gold for you. You'd be like, I'm going to spend $1 and get this whole thing, and you're going to get $20,000 or whatever it is. I don't know gold weights. But the point is, salt is super important because it preserves food for these people, and that's something that they didn't have there. They had to import. And trade's going to be increasing as we go, especially during this time period. Because we talked about the Crusades and things from the Middle East like salt and spices and stuff are starting to come to Europe. Those are very, very valuable. So for the everyday person living during this time period, this would kind of be your life. You would live, where would you live? Really the only way to say this shack? I'm going to do this like I was really in class. All right, guys, because I want to make sure I spell right. I think that's how you spell shack. But this is what I would do if we were in class. So when we come back, just know that this might happen. Hey, Suri. How do you spell Shake Shack?
Shake Shack.
You say, spelled it right. Look at that. Unbelievable. I didn't even have to do it. See, it's sometimes, but hey, better to be accurate than have you misspelling words. Anyway, the best way to describe it would be a small shack. It would have a thatch roof, meaning it would have like small sticks that would be over the top to protect them from rain, using mud to like hold certain things together, and stone. But this is where they would live, and it would be small, maybe, 2 rooms, a very rough life. And think about, well, not every day. So during your life, your day-to-day life or your year-to-year life, however long it might last during this time, if there's 365 days in a year, there's about 50 days of, celebration. Now, when I say celebration, it was not parties, all right? 50 days of celebration would have been like holy days, all right? So it would have been like holy days. There might be some festivals that would be taking place. Usually there's about like 4 festivals per year, but most of your celebration days or days that you would be not working and doing something would be used to, be praying or, church religious activities during those days. But you wouldn't be working in the fields breaking your back. So there were celebration days, but for the most part, this was a very hard life. You would not want to be in this life. You would not want to go back in time and live during medieval Europe days in Western Europe, because literally it was a small manor. You would live with your immediate family. You would just get up and work, and really your number one goal was to survive. Do we have enough bread to make it through the winter? Have we salted enough fish? Do we have enough food? Have we collected enough nuts? Do we have enough eggs? How do we get through the winter? Because if we don't, we're not going to make it. And so this was the life of the everyday person during this time. But again, back to the original point, we're seeing population increases. We're seeing a huge population increase during this time, which means people are kind of making it. It's not a great life, but people are making it. We do have, usually if we were here, I do we take a break and I talk about a story from around this time period about someone called Robin Hood. And we usually watch part of the movie Robin Hood. But today, and in this year, you are going to tell me about Robin Hood. Who is Robin Hood? 5 W's on Robin Hood. And again, as I always do, who, what, where, when, and why. Those are the 5 W's. Use these questions to tell me about, or just do an arrow, tell me about Robin Hood. It's usually going to be just about a half page to finish this up, a brief summary. Who is he? What's he about? Is he real? Is he not real? What's the story? What does he do? Why is he famous? All of these things. That is your topic today. Since we did notes last time, give you something assignment that we can put in the grade book for this. But on that note, let's get looking up Robin Hood. Get that to me today for attendance and participation purposes. And on that note, I will see you next class.